Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. Prime Minister Boris Johnson calls for world leaders to reduce carbon emissions during his speech at the United Nations General Assembly. US President Biden and French President Macron have a phone call to make up the relationship. France agrees to send the ambassador back to Washington next week. And after a killing at a petrol station, some German politicians are saying critics of the government's lockdown measures are partly responsible for the death. Prime Minister Boris Johnson calls for world leaders to reduce carbon emissions during his speech at the United Nations General Assembly and says it's time for humanity to grow up. NTD's Natalia Nutting has the story.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the United Nations General Assembly that Earth is not some indestructible toy and that it's time for humanity to grow up.
We need all countries, every single one of you, to step up and commit to very substantial reductions by 2030.
The Prime Minister says 4 areas need tackling: coal, cars, cash and trees. The UK aims to ban sales of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030.
We call on the world to come together to drive this market in a low-carbon way, drive this market so that by 2040 there are only zero-emission vehicles on sale anywhere in the world.
He calls on China to go further and end its domestic use of coal.
And my point is that you can make these cuts in pollution, these massive cuts in pollution and emissions, while driving jobs and growth. We've cut our greenhouse gas emissions by 44% in the last 30 years, while expanding our GDP by 78%.
According to the Global Carbon Project, in 1979, the UK was the 6th largest carbon polluter from burning fossil fuels. But in 1999 and 2019, the UK was not one of the big 6 polluters. Now China is the biggest carbon polluter in the world. The PM hopes the COP26 summit in the UK next month will be a turning point for humanity. Natalia Nutting, NTD News.
US President Biden had a call with French President Macron yesterday to discuss soothing tense relations between the longtime allies. The French ambassador will return to Washington next week. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us the details.
US President Biden and French President Macron had a phone call on Wednesday. This was after a submarine deal with Australia sent relations between the longtime allies into a tailspin. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the 30-minute call was friendly.
It was one where we're hopeful, and the President is hopeful. This is a step in returning to normal in a long, important, abiding relationship that the United States has with France.
Psaki says Biden reaffirmed the importance of French and European engagement in the Indo-Pacific region. This is after France recalled its ambassador from Washington last week.
The French ambassador will return to Washington next week, and he will then start intensive work with U.S. officials.
Asked if Biden apologized, Psaki sidestepped the question, saying the two leaders agreed to in-depth consultations to rebuild trust.
And I will say that the President during this call, as we said in the readout, acknowledged that there could be there could have been more discussion in advance of the announcement, and that was an important message for him to convey during that conversation.
She says Biden and Macron will meet in Europe at the end of October. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said on Wednesday he has tried to arrange a conversation with French President Emmanuel Macron, but has been unsuccessful so far. It comes a week after his cancellation of a major submarine deal sparked a diplomatic row with Paris.
Yes, we have, and the opportunity for that call is not yet. But we'll be patient. We understand their disappointment, and that is the way you manage difficult issues. It's a difficult decision. It's a very difficult decision. And of course we had to weigh up what would be the obvious disappointment to France. But at the end of the day, as a government, we have to do what is right for Australia and serve Australia's national security interests. and I will always choose Australia's national security interests first.
Morrison said he expects it to take longer to work out the issues between Australia and France than for those being worked on between France and the US. The Australian Prime Minister takes a more diplomatic view than Boris Johnson, who on Wednesday suggested France should get a grip. The Business Secretary responds to concerns that people living in the north of the UK will be worst affected by the rising gas prices, saying the government has not been complacent about the urgent challenges. NTD's Malcolm Hudson has this report.
Very much, Mr. Speaker.
Business Secretary Kwarteng agreed on Thursday that rising gas prices will disproportionately affect people living in the north due to the weather being colder there than in the south. He responded to the question from Labour MP Rachel Maskell in the Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The rise in energy prices will disproportionately impact people living in the north because it is colder during the winter in the north. So what assessment has he made of the regional disparities and how is he going to mitigate against that?
I think the Honourable Lady raises a very fair point. And clearly, in terms of the gas price, the single most important determinant of it is the weather. And she's absolutely right. That's why we've got schemes like the warm home discount, and that's why we're absolutely focused on protecting the most vulnerable customers, wherever they are in the UK.
Some smaller gas suppliers are failing in the wake of soaring wholesale gas prices, but Kwarteng says Britain has not been complacent about the vulnerability of the energy markets. Customers of failed suppliers will be reassigned to larger companies.
We haven't been complacent. The whole point about the supply of last resort process, which was interrogated last year, is that it's an organised process, well established, which can allow existing strong companies to absorb customers in failure.
Kwarteng says the government will not bail out failed companies. He also says large companies absorbing new customers will not be given subsidies. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
The EU Commission said on Wednesday it will produce a so-called toolbox of measures EU countries can take to tackle energy price spikes. This comes as European consumers face a sharp rise in bills with winter approaching. EU Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson said the measures can be employed without breaching the bloc's rules. She said options include tweaking value-added tax and excise duties or using direct support to shield consumers from high costs. European power prices have rocketed this year, mainly fueled by the rising price of natural gas. Spain, Italy, Greece and other countries are already planning national measures to respond to price spikes. Some politicians and media outlets in Germany are partly blaming incitement against the government's pandemic rules for the killing of a petrol station worker by a customer who refused to wear a face mask. NTD's John Robson has that story.
Germany's finance minister and leading candidate for Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on Wednesday that he sees those critical of pandemic measures as partly responsible for a recent fatal shooting. A German man was arrested on Sunday over the killing of a petrol station worker a day earlier in the town of Ida Oberstein. According to the police, the crime was preceded by the 20-year-old worker asking the alleged perpetrator to wear a mask. After being refused service, the suspect went home, only to return later and shoot the worker in the head. Based on initial interrogations, the suspect told officers he rejects the government's pandemic rules.
For it is those who make inflammatory, divisive speeches who have ultimately helped to fuel a climate in which this act became possible in this man's mind. And therefore they also share responsibility for the fact that this happened.
Germany's health minister on Wednesday warned of pandemic extremism. He called on Germans to speak up if friends, relatives or neighbours start spreading what he called conspiracy theories about the pandemic. A member of parliament on Wednesday said people are endangered by those critical of pandemic measures, often called lateral thinkers. Lateral thinking is the name of the largest group protesting lockdown measures in Germany. The movement, often derided as right-wing conspiracy theorists, draws from a wide spectrum of society and sees the measures as a disproportionate infringement on basic rights. A veteran criminal psychologist, in an interview with the German press agency, cautioned that the immediate cause of the killing should be differentiated from the actual deeper reason. He said no one in their right mind would shoot a young man he didn't know at all, simply because he said, "You have to put on a mask now." According to media reports, the suspect's father last year allegedly tried to shoot his wife, the suspect's mother, and then killed himself. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
Many motorists decided to leave their vehicles at home for World Car Free Day. In London, residents supported the idea of reducing traffic on the roads. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us more.
Wednesday was World Car Free Day. Motorists were encouraged to leave vehicles at home and enjoy quieter, cleaner, safer streets.
The goal is to let people have a day to try different things with the street, use it differently. It's our most abundant public space.
In London, despite the traffic, events were held to mark the occasion.
It's a way of letting people try things that they might want to make more permanent over time.
For local residents, the capital's busy streets are a worry.
I think we should follow the Parisian example, and they're looking towards having a sort of car-free city. I think ultimately London should be trying to follow that example.
Supporters of Car Free Day champion a range of advantages to reducing traffic, including health benefits.
Oh, the level of traffic, it's insane. There's always traffic. If you need to get a bus, you will always be late. The buses are always late. And if you live in zone 1 or 2, it's really complicated because you can actually, like in your house, you can see there's a lot of pollution.
But how much difference can one day of reduced traffic actually make?
For most of the population, it's actually, it's your accumulation over long periods of time that leads to the harm. So one day might be quite symbolic, it might lead to some reductions, but for most of us, only one day's improvement in air quality won't make much difference to us.
And even the latest electric technology can't eliminate all pollution.
Even when we have a fully electrified vehicle fleet, those electric vehicles will still generate the particles from friction, the wearing of the tyres on the road, the stopping and the starting and so on. So we have to be realistic that electric cars will reduce all of the emissions that occur currently from tailpipes, but they're not pollution free.
One day with fewer cars may be a symbolic victory, but alternative solutions are needed in the long term. Eddie Aiken, NTD News.
The European Union announces plans to enforce one charging point for all mobile phones, tablets and headphones. Apple is pushing back against the proposal. NTD's Joanne Robson brings us this report.
The EU aims to have a common charging port for mobile phones, tablets and headphones in a world first, with the move impacting Apple more than its rivals. Under the Commission's proposal, a USB-C connector will become the standard port. It will be on all smartphones, tablets, cameras, headphones, portable speakers and handheld video game consoles. Chargers will also be sold separately from electronic devices.
We have here a USB-C port, but I have another mobile, my personal mobile. You will recognize the brand. I won't mention it. I have another port which is not compatible, so I always have two chargers with me when I go to abroad. It is an ordeal. I have to say things as they are. We are therefore trying to resolve this type of problem.
The Commission said it was not targeting Apple and only acted because companies were not able to agree a solution despite a decade of talks. Apple pushed back against the proposal. iPhone and Android users have long complained about having to use different chargers for their phones. Apple uses a Lightning cable, while Android devices charge using USB-C. The Belgian public were divided over the Commission's proposals.
Sometimes we work with friends, and one of them has a Samsung port, the other has an Apple one. Suddenly it's a little difficult to borrow chargers. If everyone has the same cable, it's easier. It's more reasonable. I think this is a good idea.
I think Apple has the right to have its own cables. I fully agree with them. I think there's no point in changing.
The proposal needs the green light from EU member states and EU lawmakers. Then companies will have 2 years to adapt their devices. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
Netflix has purchased the rights to Roald Dahl's beloved children's stories. It says it's planning to build what it calls a unique universe of products based on the stories. The rights to the late British author's works are managed by the Roald Dahl story company, which Netflix said Wednesday it had acquired. This isn't the first time the two companies have teamed up. 3 years ago, they collaborated on several animated TV series. This included Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and an adaptation of Matilda the musical. Still to come, a Swiss startup has developed the use of 5G-connected drones to assist firefighters on rescue operations. It allows firefighters to see from perspectives previously out of reach. That and more after the break. Germans vote this Sunday. The shape-up of the next German government will also depend on how the three smaller parties fare. NTD's Eddie Aitken has that story.
It's less than 3 days until Germans head to the polls to elect a new parliament. The latest poll shows the centre-left Social Democrats headed by Finance Minister Olaf Scholz in the lead with about 25%. They are followed with 4 percentage points less by Chancellor Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union, or CDU. Its leader Armin Laschet wants to succeed Merkel as the next Chancellor. The Greens poll in third place with between 14 and 16%. 4 in 10 voters are still undecided. Since every election winner will need coalition partners, the shape-up of the next government depends also on how the three smaller parties in Parliament fare. The business-friendly Free Democrats, with their leader Christian Lindner, hope to join forces with the Union Party in a new government. Our election goal is a 2-digit figure as high as possible, so that there won't be a majority of CDU and Greens in the country, and that our country gets a new government which must be shaped out of the political middle, together with the strong Free Democrats. They stand at 11% in the polls released on Thursday. All parties represented in the Bundestag have excluded the far-right Alternative for Germany for going into coalition with. We are seeing that 4 years ago we were declared to be a slip-up, that in 4 years the AfD will no longer enter the Bundestag. They wanted to put us in place in terms of content and issues. That has failed. They did not enter into this debate. Rather, they tried to marginalize us. They stand at 11 or 12%. Polling at 7%, the smallest opposition party in the German parliament is the far left, the Left Party.
We want political change. We are fighting for a strong left, not as a coalition, but we want to achieve political change.
The Social Democrats are not excluding a possible coalition government with the support of the left. But the CDU's Laschet is warning against such an alliance. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
France will continue to require a COVID health pass to enter public spaces. A spokesman says the government has no plans to ease health pass restrictions for the time being. NTD's John Robson has more on this.
A French government spokesman said on Wednesday COVID pass restrictions are set to continue, despite the health situation improving.
At this stage, there is no decision to adjust the use of the health pass, which will continue to be implemented in the same conditions as today.
The pass has been needed to enter places such as bars and restaurants since July. It proves the holder has had a vaccine, recently tested negative or recovered from COVID.
The clear improvement of the health situation is continuing. In 1 week, the number of detected daily cases has decreased by 30%, the number of hospitalizations by 11%, and the number of COVID patients in intensive care by 15%.
In October, the Cabinet will review extending the health pass beyond the current November 15th endpoint. Dahl says from next month, some areas will allow students to remove their masks in classrooms. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
A robber in central Moscow picked the wrong target when he tried to snatch a 70-year-old lady's bag. Here's NTD's Eddie Aitken with the story.
Russian police say a female pensioner sought medical help after a failed attack by a mugger in central Moscow. CCTV footage released by the police shows a hooded man grabbing an elderly woman's handbag and trying to escape.
I was walking with my friends. They dared me, whether I could take it away or not. I pulled it. The woman fell off the curb.
The woman clutched on to her belongings. After a brief fight over the bag, the robber gave up and ran away as a bystander interfered.
I tried to pull my hand out, but she twisted my hand together with the bag. I tried to pull my hand out. I dragged her across the ground. When I freed my hand, I ran away. I didn't take anything. I just ran away.
He was arrested shortly after. Moscow police say the suspect faces criminal charges of attempted robbery. The suspect later came back to the scene with a whiskey bottle to apologize. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
5G connected drones are becoming a powerful new tool for emergency services. Known as eyes in the sky, they now make life-saving operations more efficient and less complex. NTD's Joanne Robson brings us this report.
Aerial support systems are becoming critical to the safety and efficiency of emergency services. Swiss startup Photokite recently developed 5G-connected drones, calling them eyes in the sky for rescuers. The company's CEO says better data can help inform firefighters' complex decisions.
What we work on is making that aerial information, contextual overhead information, and situational awareness available with as much ease and simplicity as possible.
In just 2 minutes, these drones can be deployed at the scene of an emergency and assess the site from above. With the low latency and high speed of the 5G network, real-time data is transferred to first responders at the site and local hospital teams via smart tablets.
Time is of the essence in this space, right? And so the quicker you can digest that information, the quicker you can turn it around into decisions off of that data, the better. This is where it's a particularly good fit with 5G technologies. This is where it's a particularly good fit with Photokite technologies. And so combining the two is just an absolute no-brainer.
According to Photokite, the drone's launch, flight and landing are fully autonomous, with all manual operations simplified. The system can fly up to 24 hours at a maximum height of over 140 feet. Each drone carries a built-in thermal imaging camera to gather data beyond human sight, such as detecting the injured through clouds of smoke. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
In Russia, one company is using deepfake technology to make people look like famous Hollywood actors with their permission. And that's not all the technology can do. NTD's Eddie Aitken has more on this.
If you think this is Bruce Willis, you're wrong. It's an authorized deepfake. Russian company Deepfake used an artificial neural network to impose his image onto the face of an actor. The ad should play well with people who are familiar with the die-hard movies Willis starred in. Deepfake technology opens up endless possibilities for the film industry, but has drawn criticism over fears that political messages could be fabricated. Like this clip, for example. It's not Obama talking, but comedian Jordan Peele. Just take a look at how real it seems.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things.
But the Russian company is going ahead with it and says it's not an easy thing to do.
The process of teaching neuron algorithm takes some time. The first video, a training one, takes about 15 to 17 days to make. However, after that we can speed up the process and produce footage up to 4K resolution, something we're working on now, generating faces in 4K in 3 to 5 days.
The possibilities of using deepfake in video production don't end at replacing one actor with another. A Russian TV channel used Deepfake services to make one of the actors look 15 years younger.
We already have requests from the Hollywood studios, from European companies for such projects. Advertising companies actively take part in it too.
The Deepfake CEO adds that the technology can bring back people's favourite heroes and villains to the screens, and they can look just as they did at the peak of their popularity. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
James Bond actor Daniel Craig is made an honorary commander in the Royal Navy, matching his on-screen character. The latest 007 movie, No Time to Die, will be released at the end of the month after repeated delays. Here's NTD's Jen Worrell with more on this.
I understand 00s have a very short life expectancy.
He's played 007 in 5 films over 15 years. Daniel Craig now has a Navy rank that matches his character. Filmmakers worked closely with the Royal Navy and Ministry of Defence on this latest production, No Time to Die. The film features warship HMS Dragon. Daniel Craig says he's truly privileged and honoured to be appointed the rank of Honorary Commander in the senior service. Actually, the Royal Navy has some real-life bonds. Lieutenant Commander Francis Bond says he was fascinated to hear Daniel Craig and the cast's perspectives on working with the armed forces. The delayed film will be released at the end of October. Following pandemic restrictions, the struggling cinema industry will hope it's a saviour. Jane Worrell, NTD News.
Aston Martin has built a little car for the little or not so little James Bond fan in your life. The small electric car is based on the classic DB5, made famous in the Bond film franchise. It has no roof, allowing an adult and a child to ride side by side in the vehicle, but it can't be driven on public roads. The car features toy machine gun headlights and a rear smoke screen device that pumps dark smoke through exhaust pipes. Only 125 are being made. They will sell for around £90,000. The real James Bond Aston Martin DB5 first appeared in the 1964 movie Goldfinger. This junior version is being released to promote the next film in the long-running series. That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via Channel Box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.